Hello again. Today's project is something that I should have done a year ago basically, and it's changing the spark plugs on the car. Plus one extra little small project at the very end. So I've already put my car up on my new quick stacks, which should make this and future projects a lot easier. And then I'll just jump right into it. First you start off by removing the rear lights with Torx. Then we go inside the wheel well. And there's two plastic 10mm bolts. Nuts? Probably nuts. And then there's the same Torx screws that are holding the rear lights, and there's 4 of them. And also a hidden bolt Torx, same Torx bolt up here that holds the rear bumper. Then underneath there's 2 more Torx screws on each side. And 2 more Phillips screws on the rear. Then the only thing left is 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that are Phillips. And you gotta remember to unclip the rear lights, and the whole bumper is ready to take off. I always love to see how ridiculously well this car is packed in especially the rear. It's really cool to watch. Then we're on to the intercoolers, and I think I'll just start with popping off the clips. There we go. Then there's 3 13mm bolts in the wheel well. 1, 2, 3. And 2 13mm bolts behind the intercooler. And then there's 1, 2, potentially, oh, there is actually 3 bolts, 10mm bolts holding the heat shields. On the other side, the heat shield was a little bit deteriorated, so there was only 1 bolt and some zip ties. All right, then it should be ready to be taken off. I think I'll pull off the hose a little bit from the inside here. And the intercooler is kind of hanging on these top 2 bolts. So you can just like unhook them. There we go. I was kind of expecting there to be some debris and stuff inside here since it's open, but they both look perfect. And either way, just gonna blow some air through it and vacuum the inside just to make sure it's all nice and clean. To get to the plugs and coil packs, you need to take away the heat shield. You can just fold it up like this. The heat shield is located behind here. It's held on by 2 10mm bolts. And there's a little hose kind of clipped onto the heat shield, so you need to unclip that. It's actually easier to do before you start taking off the bolts, but I forgot. Then you can see the coil packs in here, held on with 2 bolts each, 2 Umbraco bolts. The plugs attaching to the coils, it's a pretty tight squeeze in there, so I think I'll try to take them off before I loosen the bolts. On the other side, I found that on some of them it was easier to do it when they're attached, and on some it was easier to do it when they're loose, so it kind of depends on how tight it is. There's kind of a rubber cover over the plug, so you need to pull up the rubber cover and then push latch, and then you can pull the plug off. And the first one is definitely easier to unclip or unclip the plug while it was attached. Okay, there we have 1 coil pack out, and the plug is straight in there. The spark plug is 16mm socket for spark plugs, which has a little rubber thing in that holds the plug when you get it out. Then you do the same procedure with the other 5. Here I have the old spark plugs and the new one, the recommended one for my tuning from Marski is the PFR 7B ones. So then to gap it correctly, 0.66 millimeter, I ended up buying these. So I have a 0.65 here and a 0.7 here. So then I gap it so that the 65 just goes in and the 7 can't. So I ended up buying this little tool on eBay because I thought it would be easier to make it more accurate instead of the wire wheels that most people uses, because now I have full control over exactly how much pressure and the width while checking the gap. very little pressure that's required for moving them, so I think I'm pretty happy about buying this little thing. Okay, now the 65 one just goes in, and the 71 does not go in. So that should be pretty perfect. Just a little tip, a lot of times it's pretty easy to try and think, or it's pretty easy to think that this is the start of the plug, so you start pulling there instead of up here, which is the actual plug. So just be aware that the plug starts all the way up here. Okay, this was by far the most difficult one to get out. This thing here is directly in front of the plug, so I needed two different adapters and one angle to get it out, but it worked. That was the last of the plugs. I have them all laying here, and besides this one, which I think touched the sides here and there, they all look even and okay, I think. Then it's time to put it back together. So first I just put the spark plug carefully in without touching anything to affect the gap. And then I just hand tighten it. I torque it to the correct torque settings, which is 30 Newton meters. Then comes the most fiddly bit with getting all the coil packs back in. It's usually easiest to get the plug in, kind of halfway at least, before you attach the bolt, because then you have some wiggle room. Then you attach the bolts, and then you can easily push and lock the plug. And this one is actually so much room that you could easily push the plug and cover back on without any problems. And then these are torqued to 10 Newton meters. All plugs and coil packs are back in and torqued to the correct specifications. So then the last thing is the heat shield, which is also torqued to 10 Newton meters. I actually found some cracks in this plastic piece here, so I just took and plastic welded the cracks, and now it looks pretty much perfect again. You can see more of plastic welding. I did it in the fenders too in one of my other videos. So now everything's ready to be put back on. Done! Now, back to my surprise. I have one little extra thing that I wanted to do. And it is to put on the what's it called, X54 tailpipes, or they're called turbo tailpipes in the equipment catalog. They actually came with the car, so I've had them laying around for a really long time, but I wasn't really sure which ones I prefer. But the more I look at cars that have them, the more I like them, and I think they kind of fit the theme with turbo with a little bit extra. Since this has the aero kit, I also think it looks better with the X54 or turbo double tailpipes. I think those kind of look a little bit boring now that I'm used to them, but these kind of bring a little bit extra, so I'll take some cool pictures when it's late or light daytime, but I'm gonna put them on now, and so far I like it. Spark plugs and new tailpipes are done. See you later.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.